They put a white sheet over Omari Bennett and wrote "deceased" on the clipboard. But his story did not end on the pavement. Quick one before we get into it. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or state in the comments. And if you're here for dignity, fairness, and real accountability, hit like and subscribe, because this one turns from heartbreak to justice fast. Rain slicked the street into a mirror, turning red and blue lights into long, trembling ribbons. The kind of night where even the buildings looked like they were holding their breath. Omari stood under the edge of the tower's awning, half in shelter, half in the weather, staring up at a glass front that reflected a version of the city that never had to explain itself. He did not look like the headlines people would later print. He looked like a man who had been tired for a long time, the kind of tired that sinks into the shoulders and stays there. Mid-30s, strong build, hoodie pulled up against the cold, eyes alert, scanning, not paranoid, just practiced. That comes from being a paramedic. That comes from seeing how quickly life turns. He had been a paramedic for 9 years before he walked away. Not because he stopped caring, but because he cared too much, and the system started to treat him like a tool you use until it breaks. Now he ran a small community program out of a converted unit near the bus depot. Hot meals, a warm corner, a phone to call a relative, a form filled in properly, a quiet word with someone who did not talk down to you. Omari had a rule: never promise miracles, only promise effort. And tonight, he had promised someone something he could not take back. In his pocket was a USB drive, small, cheap plastic, nothing special. Inside it was the kind of information that makes powerful people stop smiling. He had not stolen it. He had not hacked anything. He had done what he always did. He had listened. It started 2 weeks earlier with a man named Vernon Clay. Vernon came into the unit with hands that shook like he was holding electricity. Clean jacket, decent boots, not homeless, not in crisis, just scared. Vernon said he worked in accounts for a charity that everyone in the city praised, the Harbor Light Foundation. Billboards, gala dinners, celebrity ambassadors, corporate sponsors, their posters were everywhere, smiling faces, big promises, neat slogans. Vernon sat across from Omari at a plastic table under a humming strip light and said, "It's a show." Omari did not react. He had learned that when people speak in confession, they watch your face to decide if it is safe. Vernon slid a folder across the table. Invoices, payment schedules, a list of companies with addresses that were not real offices, just mail drops. Contracts for consultancy that delivered nothing. A chain of money that left the city and returned cleaned and polite. Omari's stomach tightened, not from surprise but from recognition. He had seen this pattern before, just in different clothing. Vernon swallowed. They're using the foundation to move money around. The board is in on it, and they're pushing for evictions in the same neighborhoods they claim to be helping. They buy properties cheap, push people out, then the foundation pays to renovate, and the profits go back to private firms. Omari asked one question, soft and steady. "Why tell me?" Vernon laughed once, a sound with no humor in it. "Because they're going to throw me under the bus. I did what I was told. I signed what they put in front of me, and now I've heard my name in meetings like it's already in a headline." Omari leaned forward. "Do you have proof that links it to the top?" Vernon nodded, eyes glossy. "I copied it, but if they catch me, I'm done." Omari looked at the folder and then at Vernon. "If you go public, they'll smear you. If you go private, they'll bury you. So we do it smart." That was the promise. Effort, truth. Now it was 2 weeks later and Omari had moved in silence, careful, methodical. He had contacted a junior legal assistant he trusted, a woman named Zora Fields, who used to volunteer at the unit while studying for her paralegal qualifications. Zora was sharp in a way that did not shout. She saw loopholes the way some people see colors. Her calm was not softness, it was discipline. She had looked at the paperwork and said, "This is a laundering map. They're hiding behind charity law, but the paper trail is sloppy. If we tie the shell companies to board members, we have them." Omari had asked, "Can we do that?" Zora had answered, "We can if we get one thing, the internal legal memos, the ones they never intend anyone outside to see." And that was the problem. Those memos would not just prove greed, they would prove intent. Omari had figured out where a copy would be kept. A private office on the 19th floor of that glass tower. A place where suits spoke quietly and decided things that reached people who never entered the room. He did not break in. He waited. He watched. He caught a moment when the wrong man held the right access card, and he moved like someone who had spent years entering chaotic rooms without being noticed. 10 minutes. That is all it took. He had the memos. And now he was supposed to hand them to an investigative journalist who had finally agreed to meet, a man named Callum Price, known for exposing city corruption. Callum had chosen the worst place for a discreet meet, outside the tower. Omari had argued on the phone, low voice. "Pick somewhere neutral." Callum had said, "Neutral is an illusion. Meet me where the story is. If something happens, people will see it." Omari hated that logic. It relied on other people's courage, and he had seen how courage disappears when fear shows up in a uniform. Still, he came, because the city did not change by itself. Omari checked his watch. Callum was late. The rain thickened, and then the first button in the night clicked into place. Omari noticed a car that did not fit, not the flashing patrol cars, not the taxis, not the rideshare vehicles dropping people at the tower. This one was plain, dark, parked too far for convenience, too close for comfort. Its engine was running, but the lights were off. A silhouette inside did not move like someone waiting for a friend. It moved like someone watching. Omari did not run. He did what paramedics do when danger is near. He assessed, he planned, he kept his breathing slow. He shifted his weight and turned, as if he was just adjusting against the cold, but he angled his body so he could see the reflection in the tower glass. That reflection showed him something he could not see directly. 2 men approaching from behind, hoods up, hands low, not running. That is the detail that made Omari's blood go cold. People who are nervous run. People who are certain walk. Omari began to move, not sprinting, just leaving, a normal pace. He did not want panic on the pavement. Panic attracts attention, and attention can be used against you. He crossed towards the pedestrian lights, head down, as if he was just another man trying to get home. The men followed, a few steps behind, closing the space like a slow tide. Omari's phone vibrated. A text from Callum. Running late. 2 minutes. Omari did not reply. He turned down a side street where the tower's lights faded and the city's older buildings leaned in closer. The rain here felt heavier, trapped between brick walls. He heard footsteps behind him, now faster. He reached into his hoodie pocket and wrapped his fingers around the USB drive. Small, cheap, deadly in a different way. Then a voice, calm and close. Omari Bennett, not shouted, spoken like a confirmation. Omari stopped. Slowly he turned. 2 men, faces shadowed, a third behind them near the mouth of the alley, blocking the exit back to the main road. Omari lifted his chin. "Who are you?" One man stepped forward, just enough for streetlight to catch his jaw. He did not look like a street criminal. Clean nails, no tremor, eyes flat. "Give it to us," he said. Omari's pulse stayed steady, but his mind sprinted. He asked, "Give what?" The man smiled like a teacher correcting a child. "You know what?" Omari glanced past them, a security camera on the corner, blinking. Hope rose for half a second, then died when he noticed its lens was turned slightly away. Deliberate. That was the next button. Someone had prepped this. Omari's voice stayed level. "If you're doing this for Harbor Light, tell them they picked the wrong person. I'm not selling anything. I'm exposing it." The man's smile did not change. "That's what we're here to prevent." Omari's hand tightened around the USB. He considered throwing it, forcing them to chase it. He considered swallowing it, but it was too large. He considered running, but his exit was blocked. Then he noticed something else, a small earpiece in the man's ear. A team. Omari said, "If you shoot me, it becomes a bigger story." The man's eyes flicked, almost amused. "You think you'll be the story?" And then the first shot cracked the air. Omari flinched on instinct, not fear, muscle memory, body trying to protect itself. Pain slammed into his chest like a hammer. He staggered back, breath knocked out. Then another shot, then another. The alley echoed like it was swallowing thunder. Omari fell to one knee. His hands went to his torso, not because he understood what was happening, but because the body always tries to find the damage. He felt impact after impact. He was wearing a vest, not a military vest, nothing dramatic, just a discreet bullet-resistant vest Zora had begged him to wear after the first threats. Omari had argued he did not want to live afraid. Zora had said, "This isn't fear, this is survival. Put it on." He had put it on. Now it was taking hits like a wall takes stones. Still, blunt force trauma is not mercy. Even if the bullet does not enter, the body can break inside. Omari's lungs struggled, his vision narrowed. The men kept firing until the vest looked like it had been punched through by the fists of a furious god. 10 shots. Then a pause. Omari's mouth opened, trying to pull air that did not want to come. He looked up and saw the man step closer, gun angled down, not rushing, not panicking, finishing. The man spoke softly, almost kindly. "Should have stayed in your little unit feeding people soup." Then the 11th shot landed, and for one impossible moment, everything went quiet. Not the rain, not the sirens in the distance, not the city. Quiet inside Omari, like the power cut. His heart, battered by shock and pressure, stuttered into chaos, a rhythm that was not rhythm. He fell. His cheek hit wet concrete. The world blurred into gray. Footsteps moved around him. The men spoke in low voices, words smeared by rain. One said, "Check him." Another said, "He's done." A hand pressed at his neck, careless. Then the hand lifted. Nothing. They left, not running, walking, certain. The alley was empty except for Omari's body in the rain. Minutes later, someone screamed. A woman passing, phone in hand, saw the shape on the ground and the blood on the vest and the stillness, and her scream pulled the city's attention like a hook. Lights arrived, uniforms, voices, hands. Someone rolled him. Someone shouted for an ambulance. Someone said, "Pulse?" And another voice, too quick, too sure, said, "He's gone." That voice belonged to a police sergeant with a thick neck and a face that enjoyed being listened to. Sergeant Dale Mercer. Mercer crouched beside Omari and did not look at the vest with concern. He looked at it like it was a problem. Mercer glanced up at the officers gathering. "Clear the scene. Get that crowd back. Nobody films." But it was too late. Phones were already up. A few seconds of shaky footage was enough to build a narrative. A black man shot in an alley. The world filled in the rest with its own assumptions. The ambulance crew arrived, and one paramedic, a young man with anxious eyes, checked Omari properly. He frowned. "He's cold, but—" Mercer cut him off. "He's dead. We've got a lot going on, mate. Don't waste time." The paramedic hesitated. "I need to confirm." Mercer stood, looming. "Confirm quickly." The paramedic did not argue. He did the check again, faster, under pressure. He missed the faintest flutter. He stepped back. "He's gone." And just like that, Omari Bennett was declared dead on a street where truth could not breathe. News broke before his mother even got a call. By the time a tired nurse reached for the phone, social media had already created its own version of his life and death. Some called him a hero, some called him a criminal. Most just watched. Zora found out because someone sent her a link. She watched the footage once, then again. Then she realized something that made her stomach turn. The alley camera on the corner was not recording, or if it was, it would not be released, because Mercer was already controlling the scene like it belonged to him. Zora drove to the hospital with hands that shook. She reached the reception and said Omari's name. The clerk looked at her like she was too late. She was taken to a quiet room with bad lighting and a box of tissues no one used. A staff member with rehearsed sympathy said, "I'm sorry." Zora did not cry. "Not yet." She asked, "Can I see him?" The staff member hesitated. "He's been transferred to the city morgue," Zora said. "Already?" The staff member looked away. It was efficient. Efficient. That word hit like a slap, because efficiency is what happens when people want something finished. Zora walked out into the rain and sat in her car with the engine off, staring through a windscreen streaked with water. She called Vernon. No answer. She called Callum Price. He answered, voice tight. "Zora, I'm so sorry. I was on my way. I swear I was." Zora asked, "Did you tell anyone where you were meeting him?" Callum swallowed. "No, I didn't. I didn't think." Zora cut in. "Think harder. Who knew?" Callum's silence was an answer. He said, "I can't talk on the phone. They're watching me. Meet me tomorrow." Zora ended the call. Her mind raced through the chain. Harbor Light, the tower, the memos, the USB. Someone had known, someone had planned, and someone in uniform had helped. That was the next button. This was not just murder. This was management. At the morgue, Omari lay under harsh fluorescent light with a white tag on his toe. A clerk typed his details into a system and did not look at his face. To them, he was a file, a number, a problem to be processed. A morgue technician named Bernice Sutton approached, late shift, tired feet, hair wrapped in a neat scarf. Bernice had worked here long enough to stop being shocked by death, but she had not stopped being human. She glanced at Omari's vest, at the holes, at the blood. She frowned. Bernice had a son around Omari's age. She imagined his body on her table and felt something twist in her chest. She began the routine. Unzip, assess, record. Then she noticed a detail that did not match the paperwork. The sheet said, "No resuscitation attempted," but the bruising on his sternum suggested compressions, and the vest suggested he had been hit hard but not necessarily penetrated. Bernice leaned closer. She placed 2 fingers gently at the side of his neck. Nothing obvious. She waited. Longer. And then, so faint she almost doubted it, she felt a flutter. Her breath caught. She checked again, a tiny, desperate pulse. Bernice stared at the tag on his toe like it was a lie with handwriting. She did not call out. Not yet. She did not trust the room. Instead, she did something that would get her fired if anyone found out. She locked the door. Then she moved fast. She pulled a portable monitor from a cabinet and clipped it on. The line on the screen was ugly. Not a clean rhythm, a chaotic mess of spikes. Omari's heart was in trouble. Bernice whispered, "Come on, baby, come on." She did not have the authority to treat him. She did not have the tools to do it properly, but she had lived long enough to know that rules matter less than life. She hit the emergency call button. No response, or maybe someone ignored it. So Bernice did what she never thought she would. She dialed her nephew, an EMT, and hissed into the phone, "Get here now and don't you tell anyone why." Then, as if the universe itself had been waiting for the last possible second, Omari's body jerked. A sharp, involuntary movement. His chest rose, then fell, like a man trying to remember how breathing works. His eyes snapped open, wide, confused, terrified. Omari gasped like he had been underwater for years. Bernice stepped back, hands raised. "Easy, baby, easy, you're alive. You hear me? You're alive." Omari tried to speak, but only a rasp came out. His hand went to his vest, fingers trembling over the holes. His brain caught up in fragments. Alley, gunshots, rain, the last face. He tried to sit, but pain tore through him and he collapsed back with a groan. Bernice leaned in, voice low. "Don't move. I'm getting help." Omari's eyes locked onto hers with desperate intelligence. He whispered, barely audible, "They will come." Bernice paused. The way he said it was not paranoia. It was certainty. Bernice nodded once, slow. "Then we don't let them find you." This was the moment the story changed, not because Omari was alive, but because he was alive in a place where someone wanted him to stay dead. Bernice's nephew arrived through the back, slipping in like a shadow. He saw Omari and swore under his breath. "Miss Bernice, this is a body. This is a whole body." Bernice snapped, "Save the comedy and help him." They stabilized Omari enough to move him, not to a ward, not to an official bed, but to a storage room used for equipment, hidden behind metal shelves and locked doors. It was not safe. It was just not visible. Omari drifted in and out, pain and cold and shock dragging him under. In those half-dreams, he saw his mother's face, grief carved into it. He saw Zora's eyes, warning him. He saw Vernon's trembling hands. Then he heard a voice outside the storage room. Sergeant Mercer. His voice was casual, like he was asking for directions. "I'm here to confirm the body. We're missing a file." Bernice's blood ran cold. Her nephew whispered, "He can't be here." Bernice whispered back, "He is." Through the crack under the door, they could see Mercer's shoes, polished, unhurried. Mercer laughed softly at something a staff member said. He did not sound like a man dealing with death. He sounded like a man checking an order. Bernice held her breath. Mercer's shoes stopped, right outside. Silence. Then, after a long moment, the shoes moved away. Bernice exhaled shakily. Her nephew mouthed, "He's looking." Bernice nodded. Omari, barely conscious, whispered, "USB." Bernice leaned close. "What?" Omari's lips barely moved. "Pocket left." Bernice reached carefully and found it, still there, inside a sealed inner pocket of the hoodie under the vest. She held it up like it was a tiny brick of destiny. Bernice whispered, "This is why." Omari did not answer. He could not. But his eyes told her enough. This small thing had caused the night to explode. Bernice made a choice. She did not know Omari. She did not owe him. But she had grown up in a world where the wrong people got protected and the right people got buried. And she was tired of burying. She called Zora. How did she have Zora's number? Because Bernice's son had once been helped at Omari's unit when he was struggling and too proud to admit it. The city is small in the ways that matter. Bernice's voice on the phone was blunt. "Your friend isn't dead." Zora froze. "Who is this?" Bernice said. "Listen to me. He's alive, but somebody is hunting him. If you want to see him breathing tomorrow, you come alone and you come quiet." Zora's heart slammed against her ribs. She whispered, "Where?" Bernice gave her an address and a time. Zora said, "What do you want?" Bernice paused, then said, "Justice, and maybe someone to finally explain why good men keep ending up on my table." The next morning, Zora walked into a side entrance of the morgue with a hood up and a face that looked calm only because her fear had nowhere else to go. Bernice led her through corridors that smelled like disinfectant and resignation. Then she opened the storage room door. Zora saw Omari lying on a makeshift bed of blankets, pale, breathing shallow, but breathing. Zora's hand flew to her mouth. Tears finally came, hot and angry. She moved to him. Omari opened his eyes. They were unfocused at first. Then they found her. He tried to speak. Zora leaned close. Omari whispered, "Callum." Zora's voice shook. "He's alive. He's scared. He feels guilty." Omari blinked slowly. "Vernon." Zora's face hardened. "I haven't reached him. He's missing." Omari's jaw tightened. Even in pain, even half dead, his mind kept working. He whispered, "They'll blame me." Zora nodded. "They already started. They're calling it gang-related. They're saying you were involved in something." Omari closed his eyes for a moment, like he was swallowing rage. Then he whispered, "USB. Safe?" Zora pulled it from her bag and held it up. "Safe." Omari's eyes opened, sharper. "We finish it." Zora leaned in, voice firm. "We do this right. You cannot be seen. Not yet. If they know you're alive, they will come again." Omari's breath hitched with pain. "Then we make them fear daylight." That became the plan. Not revenge. Exposure. Because the people who operate in shadows hate one thing more than prison: being seen for who they are. Over the next few days, Omari stayed hidden in a place no one would think to search. Bernice's sister owned a small hair salon in a quieter part of town, the kind of place with a back room full of boxes and old chairs. They set up Omari there, curtains drawn, phone off, food brought in quietly. And while his body fought to recover from the trauma, his mind fought to stay alive for a different reason. He had been declared dead. That meant legally he was not supposed to exist. No hospital records, no official care, no protection. He was a ghost, and ghosts have no rights. Zora went to work, her job, her day life, her normal smile. But at night she became something else, a woman building a case out of fragments while powerful people tried to sweep those fragments into drains. She met Callum Price in a crowded cafe where the noise made it hard to eavesdrop. Callum looked terrible, eyes sunken, hands jittery around his coffee. He said, "I'm sorry." Zora did not soften. "Sorry won't save him. Who knew where you were meeting?" Callum swallowed. "I mentioned it to one person, just one, a contact, a security consultant who sometimes tips me off." Zora asked. "Name?" Callum hesitated. Zora leaned forward. "Name," Callum said. "Derek Hanley." Zora's eyes narrowed. "Harbor Light security chief?" Callum nodded, ashamed. "He's fed me stories before. He acted like he wanted to bring them down." Zora whispered, "He brought Omari to them." Callum shook his head fast. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know," Zora said. "Then you're going to make it right. You're going to help us expose them, and you're going to do it publicly, because if you keep hiding behind whispers, they'll kill again." Callum looked around, paranoia sharp. "They'll kill me." Zora's voice went cold. "They already killed him. They just failed to keep him dead." That sentence hung in the air like a flare. Callum blinked. "What do you mean?" Zora did not answer. Not yet. Because Omari's survival was their biggest card, and you do not play your biggest card until the table is ready. Zora slid a folder across to Callum. "These are the first pieces. You publish when I tell you." Callum opened it and went pale. "This is huge," Zora said, "and it's not enough." The next button came from an unexpected place. A retired accountant named Mrs. Pauline Grange, who had once worked for one of Harbor Light's partner firms, recognized a shell company name when Zora showed her a list. Pauline sat in her small kitchen, teacup shaking, and said, "That company was used 10 years ago in a different scandal, different charity, same pattern. The men behind it never got charged. They just changed logos." Zora asked, "Do you remember names?" Pauline did. She said one that made Zora's stomach drop. Sergeant Dale Mercer. Not as a sergeant then, but as a young officer who handled evidence in the old case. Zora left Pauline's house with rain biting her face and anger burning in her chest. Mercer was not a random corrupt cop. He was a recurring tool, which meant someone bigger was holding the handle. At this point, if you're feeling the weight of this, I want you to drop a comment with one word: accountability, because this is exactly why stories like this matter. People get away with too much when the public gets tired and scrolls on. Zora needed a lever, someone with authority who was not already bought. She found one in the least glamorous place. A woman named Lorna Kincaid, an investigator in professional standards, the unit that checks police misconduct. Kincaid did not have a friendly reputation. Officers called her the Ice Queen because she did not flirt with excuses. Zora requested a meeting using her legal firm's letterhead to get past the gatekeeping. Kincaid agreed to 10 minutes. They met in a plain office with peeling paint and paperwork stacked like small towers. Kincaid watched Zora like she was weighing her. Zora began with the facts, not emotion. Omari Bennett was shot 11 times. The scene was controlled. CCTV was turned. Sergeant Mercer directed medical staff to declare death quickly. The body was transferred to the morgue with unusual speed. I believe Mercer is covering for Harborlight Foundation. Kincaid's face did not change. She said, "That's a serious allegation." Zora placed the folder on the desk. "Here are the financial links between Harborlight board members and shell companies. Here are the internal memos showing intent to push evictions under the cover of charity work. Here are witness accounts that Mercer was on scene before dispatch time suggests he could have arrived." Kincaid flipped through slowly. Then she looked up. "How did you get these memos?" Zora met her gaze. "Legally, from a whistleblower." Kincaid paused. "Where is this whistleblower now?" Zora swallowed. "Missing." Kincaid's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She said, "You're putting yourself in danger." Zora answered, "Danger found us." Kincaid leaned back, considering. Then she said, "If you have what you think you have, this isn't just Mercer. This is a network." Zora nodded. "Yes." Kincaid tapped the folder. "I can open an internal inquiry, but if Harborlight has people in high places, they will try to bury it. I need something undeniable." Zora's throat went dry. She had something. The one thing that was undeniable. But it was also the most dangerous. She said carefully, "What if the person they declare dead isn't dead?" Kincaid's eyes narrowed. "Are you playing games?" Zora shook her head. "No." Kincaid held her stare for a long moment. Then she said, low, controlled, "If that's true, you tell me where he is, and you tell me now." Zora didn't. Not yet. She said, "I'll tell you when I'm sure you can protect him." Kincaid's face tightened, anger and respect mixing in a way that did not show up as softness. She said, "You're either very brave or very foolish." Zora replied, "Probably both." Kincaid stood. 10 minutes are up. Leave the folder. I'll be in touch." Zora walked out with her heart pounding. As she stepped into the corridor, she noticed 2 men in suits near the exit. Not police, not staff. Clean, expensive, quiet. One of them watched her just a little too long. Zora did not run. She walked, steady, like she belonged. But inside, alarms screamed. They were watching. That night, back in the salon's hidden room, Zora told Omari what she had done. Omari listened, face tight. When she mentioned the 2 men, Omari said, "Harborlight has private security beyond Hanley. They have fixers, people who make problems disappear." Zora whispered, "Then we make the problem too loud to disappear." Omari nodded slowly. "We need Mercer's communications. If we can tie him to Hanley on the night of the shooting, it proves coordination." Zora asked, "How do we get that?" Omari stared at the ceiling, thinking through pain. Then he said, "We bait them." "Huh?" Zora frowned. "With what?" Omari's eyes met hers. "With me." Zora shook her head immediately. "No." Omari's voice was rough. "They need to believe I'm dead. If they suspect I'm alive, they'll move. We can use that movement." Zora's eyes flashed. "You nearly died." Omari's mouth twisted. "I did die, according to paperwork." Bernice, sitting in the corner, spoke quietly. "He's right in one way. People like that only show their hands when they think they're losing control." Zora looked between them, furious and frightened. Omari softened just slightly. "We don't put me in the street. We put a rumor in the right ear. We let them panic. Panic makes mistakes." So they built a rumor. Callum Price would be the delivery system. He would publish a teaser, not the whole story. A single line on social media, vague but sharp. Sources say the Harborlight files did not die with him. Nothing more, no names, no proof, just a spark. Callum hated it. "That's going to paint a target on me," Zora said. "You already have one. At least now it has purpose." Callum posted it at 9:03 p.m. By 9:12, it was being shared. By 9:24, Harborlight's PR team released a statement calling it conspiracy content and harmful misinformation. By 9:45, someone tried to break into Callum's flat. He called Zora with a shaking voice. "They're here," Zora asked. Are you safe? Callum whispered. For now. Zora said, Good. Don't go back. Go to a hotel, cash booking, and keep your phone off unless you're calling me. Callum did as he was told, and Harborlight did exactly what Omari predicted. They panicked. Derek Hanley called Mercer. Kincaid's unit, already watching Mercer quietly after Zora's meeting, captured the call metadata. Not content, just the fact that it happened, but it was enough to confirm connection. Kincaid called Zora the next morning. Her voice was ice with a crack in it. You were telling the truth, Zora said. Yes. Kincaid said, They contacted Mercer after the teaser. He made 2 off-books visits last night. One to the morgue, one to Harborlight's tower. He's moving. Zora's pulse jumped. Can you pull his messages? Kincaid exhaled. I can request, but requests take time. Time is what you don't have. Zora said, Then we force time. Kincaid paused. What are you planning? Zora did not tell her everything. Instead, she offered something Kincaid could not ignore. I will bring you the whistleblower evidence in full, plus the memos, plus the bank trail, in exchange for one thing. You protect a witness? A living witness. Kincaid went silent. Then, quietly, Where is he? Zora gave an address, not the salon, but a secondary location, a safer handoff point. Kincaid agreed. And that afternoon, Omari Bennett stepped into daylight for the first time since the alley. He wore a cap low and a mask, looking like a man trying to disappear. But his posture gave him away. He moved like someone who had once run into danger for other people. Kincaid met them in an unmarked car. She saw Omari, and for a second, her control slipped, not into emotion, into a kind of anger that looks like disbelief. They signed your death certificate, she said. Omari nodded. Yes. Kincaid stared at him. That's not a mistake. That's a decision. Omari said, I know. Kincaid looked at Zora. Get in. Inside the car, Kincaid spoke fast and precise. I can hide you for a short time, but understand this. If Harborlight has friends in places I can't see, nowhere is fully safe. Omari said, I'm not asking for forever. I'm asking for a chance. Kincaid asked, Do you have the original files? Zora handed over the USB. Kincaid plugged it into a secure device and skimmed. Her face hardened. These memos. They knew exactly what they were doing. They used charity contracts to funnel money. They used displacement to profit. They used community impact language as cover, Omari said, and they used bullets when paper wasn't enough. Kincaid nodded once. We move now. That was the next major beat. The story was no longer in the hands of whispers. It was entering a formal process. But formal processes are slow, and slow processes get sabotaged. Kincaid prepared warrants. She needed a judge. Harborlight had influence, so she chose a judge with a reputation for being stubborn, Justice Miriam Oates, known for hating theater. Kincaid presented the case with a calm that did not ask permission. Justice Oates reviewed the evidence. Then she asked one question. Where is the victim? Kincaid said. Alive. Oates looked up slowly. Kincaid continued. Declared dead under suspicious circumstances. Hidden for survival. Will testify. Oates stared for a long moment, then said, Bring me corroboration, medical proof. Bernice Sutton provided a sworn statement. Kincaid's nephew provided his own. Omari, in a secure room, allowed a doctor to examine him properly. Bruising, trauma, a heart rhythm abnormality consistent with severe shock. The doctor looked at Omari and said quietly, You should not be alive. Omari replied, I know. The judge signed the warrants, and the next morning, Harborlight's tower woke up to a different kind of visitor. Not donors, not press, not smiling board members. Uniforms and investigators moved through the lobby while staff pretended not to stare. Derek Hanley stood at the security desk, jaw tight, trying to maintain control. He approached Kincaid with forced calm. Investigator, what's the meaning of this? Kincaid held up the warrant. Search and seizure. Step aside. Hanley's smile was thin. Harbor Light cooperates with all lawful inquiries. Kincaid stared at him. Good. Then cooperating should be easy. They moved upstairs. Doors opened, computers copied, files removed, people whispered, and in one glass meeting room, a white man in a tailored suit stood watching everything like it was happening to someone else. Graham Whitlock, Harbor Light's CEO. Whitlock spoke to the room, voice smooth. This is a misunderstanding. Kincaid did not look impressed. A misunderstanding doesn't leave shell companies in memo trails. Whitlock's eyes narrowed. Investigator, you're making serious allegations that could damage a charity that feeds people. Kincaid replied, feeding people doesn't excuse bleeding them. Whitlock flinched at that. The line hit too close to truth. Meanwhile, Sergeant Mercer realized the net was closing. He did what corrupt people do when they feel cornered. He tried to destroy evidence. Kincaid's team tracked his movements. They found him in the precinct records room, alone, shredding paper. Kincaid stepped into the doorway and said, "Step away from the shredder, Sergeant." Mercer froze, then tried to recover with fake outrage. "This is harassment." Kincaid walked in slowly. "Funny. That's what you called Omari Bennett on the night you declared him dead." Mercer's face twitched. "How do you know about that?" Kincaid said. "Because he's alive." Mercer's mask cracked for half a second. Fear flashed, real fear. Then it hardened into anger. "You're lying." Kincaid held up her phone and played a short video. Omari in a secure room, looking into the lens, voice rough but steady. "I'm alive, and I know who tried to erase me." Mercer's mouth opened and shut. He looked around like he was searching for an exit. Kincaid said, "No exits today." Mercer tried a different tactic, leaning into denial. "He was involved in criminal activity." Kincaid stepped closer. "That's the story you pushed because it's convenient. But the truth is in your call logs, in your movements, in the CCTV you lost, and in the fact you visited the morgue twice after he was declared dead." Mercer's eyes darted. Kincaid said, "Who told you to do it?" Mercer laughed harshly. "You think I take orders? I'm a sergeant." Kincaid said, "Then you're a sergeant with a chain." And she pulled it. Not physically, legally. They arrested Mercer on obstruction and suspicion of conspiracy. As he was led out, he shouted, "You don't know what you're messing with!" Kincaid turned her head slightly. "That's what people say when the truth is about to hit daylight." Harbor Light responded with PR. Whitlock went on a local news program that afternoon, face calm, voice smooth. He talked about community commitment and false narratives and respect for law enforcement. He smiled as if smiling could rewrite reality. Callum Price watched the interview in his hotel room and felt sick. Zora watched it from Kincaid's office, hands clenched. Omari watched it from a secure location, heart pounding not from fear, but from the old familiar rage. Then the next button dropped, because Whitlock made one mistake. He referenced a detail that had not been made public. He said, "We had nothing to do with what happened in that alley where Mr. Bennett was tragically shot 11 times. No official statement had confirmed the number of shots. The public only saw shaky footage and chaos. The 11 detail was known to investigators, not to the press." Zora leaned forward, eyes wide. "He just incriminated himself." Kincaid nodded slowly. "Yes." Whitlock had revealed he had inside information, which meant someone told him, which meant there was coordination. Kincaid moved fast to subpoena Harbor Light's internal communications. Meanwhile, Omari's reappearance needed to be strategic, not a random reveal, a controlled reveal that turned the story inside out. Zora proposed a public hearing, a city council session about housing and charity oversight. Harbor Light had been lobbying hard for new redevelopment permissions. They would be there, the press would be there, and the public would be watching. Kincaid warned, "This is dangerous." Omari said, "So was being declared dead." Zora said, "We do it with security, with cameras, with a clear narrative. We don't let them shape it." They prepared. Omari practiced speaking without letting pain steal his breath. He was still healing. His chest ached, his sleep was broken, his body flinched at sudden sounds, but his eyes had changed. They held a calm fire, the kind that comes from surviving something you were not meant to survive. Before the hearing, Omari asked to see his mother, just once. Kincaid resisted, but Omari insisted. They arranged it in a secure location. His mother, Mrs. Yvette Bennett, arrived with grief still on her face like a shadow that had learned her shape. When she saw Omari, she froze. Her brain refused it at first. Then she moved, hands trembling, and touched his face as if he might vanish. She whispered, "They said you were gone." Omari's voice broke. "Mom." She pulled him into a careful hug, mindful of his injuries, but desperate all the same. She cried, not pretty, not quiet, but like someone who had been hollowed out and suddenly given breath. Then she stepped back and looked into his eyes. Her voice turned firm. "Who did this?" Omari said. "People who thought I'd be easy to erase." Yvette wiped her tears with the heel of her hand and nodded once, steel settling into her posture. "Then you don't hide. You stand. You tell them my son is not paper they can throw away." Omari nodded. The day of the hearing, the council chamber was full. Cameras, press, protesters outside with signs, some defending Harbor Light, some demanding answers. The room was hot with bodies and tension. Graham Whitlock sat near the front, suit perfect, expression mild, as if he was attending a fundraiser. Derek Hanley stood at the side, scanning the room, security instincts twitching. Zora sat behind the council table, face composed. Kincaid stood near the back, plain clothes, alert. Callum Price was there too, camera crew ready, eyes sharp. The council chair called the session to order. Whitlock spoke first, calm, polished. He talked about revitalization and support programs and partnerships. He made it sound like a gift. Then a council member asked about the investigation. Whitlock smiled. "We welcome transparency." Then the doors at the back opened. A hush rippled through the room. Omari walked in, not rushed, not hiding. A bulletproof vest under a dark jacket, not visible, but the weight of it changed his silhouette. His face was real, not a rumor, not a headline, a living man. People gasped, phones rose, Whitlock's smile froze. Hanley's eyes widened, shock flickering before he masked it with anger. Omari walked down the aisle like the room belonged to him, like he was not asking permission to exist. He reached the front, stood at the microphone, and looked directly at the cameras. His voice was not loud. It did not need to be. "I'm Omari Bennett," he said, "and I'm alive." The room exploded into noise. The chair hammered the gavel. "Order! Order!" Omari held up a hand. He waited. Slowly, the noise lowered, not because the room was calm, but because everyone needed to hear what came next. Omari continued, "I was shot 11 times. I was declared dead. My body was transferred to the morgue with unusual speed. And while the city argued online about what kind of man I must have been, I was lying in a room with a toe tag on my foot." Whitlock's face tightened. Omari looked straight at him. "And the people who did this did not do it because I was dangerous. They did it because I had evidence." Zora stood and placed a file on the table with a deliberate thud. Omari said, "Harbor Light Foundation has been laundering money through shell companies, using charity work as cover, and pushing evictions in the same communities it claims to protect." Whitlock leaned forward, voice smooth but strained. "This is outrageous." Omari did not flinch. "It's documented. Internal memos, financial trails, board links." The chair tried to regain control. "Mr. Bennett, you cannot make allegations without—" Kincaid stepped forward and held up her badge. "Actually, he can, because this is an active investigation and the warrants have already been executed." Gasps again. Whitlock's eyes flicked to Hanley. Hanley's jaw clenched. Omari pressed on, voice sharpening. "The night I was shot, Sergeant Dale Mercer controlled the scene. He told medical staff not to resuscitate. He ordered people not to film. He pushed a narrative before an investigation even started. A council member stood, furious. "Is that true?" Kincaid answered. "Mercer has been arrested." The chamber erupted. Whitlock stood abruptly, face red now, control slipping. "This is a political stunt." Omari leaned slightly toward the mic. "No, it's a survival story, and it ends with accountability." Then Omari delivered the final blow. He said, "Graham Whitlock, on television you said I was shot 11 times. That detail was never released. So who told you?" Whitlock's mouth opened. No words came out. The silence was louder than shouting. Callum Price's camera zoomed in on Whitlock's face. The crack, the panic behind the polish. Hanley moved as if to step forward, but Kincaid's team blocked him. Omari turned his gaze to the chamber. "This is what happens when people think the poor, the black, the overlooked can be erased quietly. They build stories about us. They file us away. They move on." He paused, letting the room sit in it. "But I'm here, breathing, standing, and I'm not leaving until the truth is fully told." The hearing ended in chaos, but it was the right kind of chaos, the kind that does not disappear by morning. Outside, news vans lined the street. Harbor Light donors called in panic. Board members tried to resign. Lawyers rushed in, and the public finally had a clear image to attach to the story. Not a shaky alley video. A man walking back into a room that had already mourned him. Dead man walking. In the days that followed, the case unraveled fast. Warrants expanded, bank accounts froze, shell companies exposed. A board member attempted to flee the country, stopped at the airport. Another tried to wipe a hard drive, too late. Derek Hanley was arrested on conspiracy charges when messages tied him to the setup, including instructions to rotate CCTV angles for maintenance the night Omari was shot. Graham Whitlock held a press conference where he tried to frame himself as a victim of miscommunication, but the documents were too clear. He stepped down. Then he was charged. Sergeant Mercer, cornered, tried to bargain. He offered names, blaming people above him. Kincaid listened, recorded, and used it. Because the truth is not just a moral thing. It's a legal thing. And when you build it properly, it holds. Vernon Clay was found alive in a motel 2 towns over, shaken, bruised, but breathing. They had tried to intimidate him into silence. They had not expected the case to go public so quickly. Zora sat with him and said, "You did the right thing." Vernon whispered, "I almost didn't. I thought no one would protect me." Zora looked at him and said, "We're building a world where they can't do this alone." Omari finally walked into his community unit again, weeks later. People froze when they saw him. Then someone cried. Then someone ran forward and hugged him like the whole neighborhood had been holding its breath. His mother stood in the doorway, watching, arms crossed, eyes wet, proud and furious at the same time. Omari looked at the worn plastic tables, the donated chairs, the old posters, the kettle in the corner. This place was not glamorous, but it was real. And real things are what scare people who live off illusion. A young boy approached him, maybe 12, eyes wide. "Are you really the guy who came back?" Omari crouched slightly, meeting the boy's gaze. "I'm really the guy they tried to silence," the boy asked. "Why would they do that?" Omari glanced around at the people eating, talking, laughing, living. Then he said, "Because they thought we'd accept anything. They thought we'd be tired." He stood and looked into the room. But tired doesn't mean defeated. That night, Omari sat alone in the back room, lights low, breathing steady, finally letting himself feel what his body had been refusing. The fear, the anger, the grief for the version of him that died in that alley. Zora entered quietly and sat opposite him. She placed a small folder on the table. "What's that?" Omari asked. Zora's voice was careful. "A sealed report Kincaid found in Mercer's locker. It's old, different case number, but the language is familiar." Omari's eyes narrowed. How familiar? Zora slid it towards him. It mentions Harbor Light, years ago under a different name, and it mentions a missing body cam segment that was never recovered. Omari stared at it, heart heavy. Zora said softly, "We won this fight, but it might not be the whole war." Omari leaned back, eyes closing for a second. Then he opened them, steady again. "Then we keep going." Zora nodded. And that's the lesson that sits under all of this. Systems that thrive on silence depend on you believing you are alone. They depend on you being too tired, too scared, too convinced nothing will change. But when one person refuses to stay erased and another person refuses to look away, the whole machine starts to shake. Not because the machine suddenly grows a conscience, but because it finally meets resistance. So if this story moved you, let it remind you of something simple. Dignity is not a gift people hand to you. It's a standard you insist on, and accountability is not cruelty. It's care for the world we all share. If you want a part 2, drop part 2 in the comments, because that sealed report and that missing body cam segment might lead somewhere bigger. And again, tell me where you're watching from. I read those comments. I see you. Like and subscribe for dignity, fairness, and real accountability.